I just like do crazy stuff like that. You know, every day is different, so you got to just kind of live in the moment.
How's growing up in that tight-knit community?
You know, you'll go to high school with these girls and they love rap and they hate country, and then you see them now and they have a cowboy hat on and you're like, I thought you hated country music.
You run into them at the Reno Rodeo and like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
In your career right now, is this a really pivotal moment?
Why are you really doing this at the end of the day? Like, are you trying to be a big star?
You have to remain ready for that opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it could be any day. You never know.
Hello, and welcome to another Reno Live Podcast. My name is Brian.
My name is Joel.
And today we have a very, very special guest with us today. He is an up and rising country music artist from Gardnerville, Nevada. You can catch his new EP, Sin and Salvation, on Spotify and all the streaming platforms. He'll be playing at Night in the Country next month. Please give a warm welcome for Jakota Wass.
Thank you guys for having me. I can't wait.
We have a special guest, so we thought we'd have a little special drink on here. We got a Frey Ranch 150th anniversary and celebration of the University of Nevada, Reno. So glad you're on here. Jakota, cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Whiskey does hit different at 9:35 in the morning, though. So
Yep, giving it away. I recently saw you play the Lodge, and it was just you and a couple guitarists backing you up. Fantastic show. We were talking a little bit about you getting some shows in Reno when you first got up here. Can you talk a little bit about how you got started and started with the Lodge?
Yeah, so I moved to Reno, I think, when I was 18 after high school, went to UNR, and I knew I wanted to start playing shows in Reno. And Carly and Leah, the owners, reached out on Instagram and said, hey, want to come by and, you know, play on a Wednesday night or something? And I said, sure. So I kind of went by, and it took a couple of times, but I started to get to know the people that just pop in there regularly, and just became a super fun venue. And I kept booking there, and it was a great spot to just try out new songs, kind of get personal with the crowd. And sometimes now I don't get to do that as much. It's a set list, and you got to just pump through all the songs. So that's what I personally really like about it. And Carly and Leah work so hard there, and it's kind of their baby, right? So, and we were kind of talking earlier that they have so many musicians play there, and I really respect that as well.
Can you talk a little bit about where you've come from with country music, how that's played a role in your life, whether that's part of your roots or something that you just loved, you loved the genre and wanted to pursue it?
Of course. Well, I was born in the Carson Valley, and so I would spend a lot of time with my grandma. She had a little ranch, and she was a pretty stubborn gal. Some of my early fans know her, and she would be at shows in her little wheelchair. And so she would kind of forcefully make me listen to old country, and I think that ended up being a great thing because I grew up for it. And she had a little radio. She would always be playing Johnny Cash on, and so and I remember this. We went to the farmer's market, and I think I was only like 4 years old, and she tipped a guy like $5, and she's like, make him sing Ring of Fire. And so sure enough, I was up there, and I was super nervous, but things like that kind of pushed me to play a little bit. So that's
did you start off your shows saying, hello, my name is Jakota Wass?
I wanted to, you know, and yeah, so I only learned Johnny Cash. I was set on it. And then people were like, oh, he's the Johnny Cash kid. And I was like, well, maybe I should learn some other music because that might stick, you know. I wanted to.
Don't want to typecast yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So I learned some other stuff. As I got older, I kind of liked newer country, Morgan Wallen and all that. And I try to kind of write both now when I put out my own music. And what's funny is a lot of records you listen to have like a theme, but I like to have a song that sounds like Zach Bryan maybe, and then old school sounding song. So I try to have songs that anyone that generally likes country might find something they like.
Yeah.
It's not all just one kind of genre. So,
well, speaking of Morgan Wallen and Johnny Cash, Joel and I were just talking, and we think that you're just an amazing singer and you have amazing stage presence. And, you know, looking at your Instagram, you're out there on the ranch with the cattle behind you, you're with your dog. It might be snowing, but you're just getting in touch with nature. And then the next video you post, you know, you're at the Reno Rodeo kickoff concert with a full rockin' band behind you. and guys are pouring shots of whiskey on there. And it's just like there's just two sides of the coin. And I think that you personally have all the makings to be a superstar. And none of it seems to be phony. It's just like you have those roots that you grew up in a small town in Nevada, and then boom, you're on stage playing for thousands of people, and you just have a very commanding stage presence. And it's been really fun to watch. And looking back at your Instagram from previous years to now, it's just the evolution that you've gone through is just really inspiring to watch.
No, thank you. I think that that's true. And like a lot of people have, a social media manager, and they want to do all these like stage videos. And, at first I thought about that, but I just like going out. It's in my backyard, go out with the cows. A lot of times I put up a tripod or have a friend come out and film a quick video. And honestly, I'm not a big social media guy, but obviously in this industry you have to be. So I set a goal that, we want to try to grow our following, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to release a video every Saturday. So that's kind of been my goal. I should do more, but I just think being like, people seek kind of authentic stuff nowadays, and, people can kind of tell what's made up and what's true. So I try to just go out there and be myself, and then do the shows that we do and let people see both sides. I think is really cool.
It's a really good mesh together.
Do you do all of your own social media?
Yeah, right now I do. I have a couple friends help out, and that's huge. One day, obviously, I think I'll have to give that role to somebody else. But for now, I try to do everything.
Sure. Going back a little bit to your music, even your last EP, Sin and Salvation, I believe, right?
Yep.
Listening through that, you can see a lot of the old country influence.
Yeah.
With some new country feel as well. I think that really fits your voice perfectly. What has been your development as a vocalist and as a musician over the years?
I think just finding your own style and sound. And people would ask me, what artist are you trying to be like? And, I wouldn't really have an exact answer for that. And I just think like I'm 22 now, so when I was 16 and 18 and even now, like I'm still learning how to use my voice. I took a couple like vocal lessons from a neighbor as a kid, but just like I haven't had a lot of training. And I just think the more I play, the more you get into how you want to sound. And guitar playing is just something I kind of picked up as a kid, but every day you can learn something. So, and hopefully you just keep getting better at what you do.
Sure.
I wanted to talk about Sin and Salvation. I texted Joel earlier this week and said I've been listening. I think I've listened to it 5 or 6 times all the way through, like in the last week. Loaded Gun is for sure one of my favorite. The everything on that one, but the strings, the violin on that is just amazing. But you recorded that at Blackbird Studio in Nashville.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that whole experience?
Well, I could probably talk an hour about that, how cool it was. But in a nutshell, I basically wanted to record an album in Nashville. But at the same time, like I wanted to capture like this vision I had of getting people into the studio all at once together. And so Adam Palmer's a friend of mine, and he's from Gardnerville, and he's really connected back there. And so he was like, let's do this project you want to do. And he knew all these musicians that he'd worked with, and like the fiddle players on tour right now with George Strait. And so like we got some really big cats down there. But the cool thing is like, let's just take example Loaded Gun. That was a song that I wasn't really planning on putting it on there. And last minute, we're like, I kind of want to put the song on there, but I hadn't played it like a year before. I just had wrote the song like a week before the studio date. And so we flew to Nashville, and there's pictures of this. I'll have to show you guys later, but we all just kind of sit in a room, and I played the song once. They've never heard it before. And what's really cool about the Blackbird Studio one, it's like historic and it's just beautiful inside, but everyone, like the fiddle player's like, what if I came in here and did this awesome thing? And the bass player's like, what if you did this? And everyone kind of works as a team.
The collaboration.
Yeah. Then you go in your separate rooms, and in like 2 takes, it sounds like a song. And that's what they're good at. I don't know how they do it, but never hearing the song before, and they just go in there and play it. So it was a surreal experience. We're going to be back there in October. Haven't told a lot of people this, but we're going to do a full album, so I'm super excited for that. And yeah, it's a great experience there. As soon as I went there, I'm like, I never wanted to do anything different recording-wise. So
I think that's what Nashville has that a lot of other even music cities don't necessarily have to the same degree of those professional session musicians that can just get work done.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember this is a decade ago. I'm sure it's changed a lot, but numbers of radio stations across the country of like, you have X amount of rock, X amount of this, X amount of country, and country was like easily 10 times the amount of any other station in the country. So the amount of material you have to be able to get in there and just get it done. And how do you think that affects the creative process of an album when you can know that as soon as we get in the studio, we're going to, complete this in a short amount of time? Does that open up more avenues for creativity, you think?
I think it could go both ways. And so I do agree that you're spot on, because when we go, like, people that are famous, like, they can have enough money to rent it out for a week.
Mm-hmm.
But we had it for one day. So we're like, we got to record everything in this 12-hour chunk. And so part of it is like, for me per se, you want to hear how you want this song to go. And you want to tell that fiddle player, I want you to play it just like how I hear it. But the producer told me this, and I'll kind of just remember it. And he's like, step back and think of this. This fiddle player is one of the top fiddle players, maybe in the country. Like, this is her forte. Like, don't even tell her what you want to do, because what if what she does sounds way better? So we kind of, when we hire someone, like, obviously they're sought out and really good at their trade. So we want to give them the chance to have their instrument shine and do the part they want. And then you can kind of give them guidelines. But so I think the creative process, when you only have a certain amount of time to do it, it is hard. But I think each player is really experienced and they're able to come up with something really nice in that amount of time.
Right.
I think that's what's tough for a lot of musicians is like you have this sound in your head and like you just are obsessed with getting it out of your head into the speakers. But that's what a collaboration is. Like, you just have to kind of trust, and like that's what playing in a band is like everyone kind of brings their own thing to the table, and it might be for the better, it might not be, but it's just that you have to let go a little bit. And I think that's really hard for a lot of people to do with their own music, but just learning to trust, like, you got this, and whatever you do is probably going to serve the song.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you write solo or do you co-write?
So I co-write kind of all my songs with one person right now, and she is a family friend and was hanging out with my brother since they were like in kindergarten. And so she's probably like 8 years older than me, but she is a super just fun person, and her name's Jordan. And so it was during COVID, and she always hates when I say the story, but it's so funny. This reminds me of right now. We were all home doing nothing, and she posted on social media, hey, cheers everyone, margaritas at 9 a.m., we're getting drunk, like, she's just super funny. And I was like 16 at the time, or 15. I was like, oh, that's awesome. And so I called her. I'm like, hey, I've never wrote a song before. You want to come meet at the park and we'll try something out? And I've tried to write songs with my sister, and it just like wasn't there, and so I sat down with Jordan at the park, and in an hour we had like a full song done. I was like, wow, our brains just really work well together. And so that was Princess Crown off of my first album. And so we've been writing together for like 7 years. And so now I'll kind of write like the gist of a song, because she lives back east. And so then we'll get on a FaceTime like once a week, and I'm like, okay, I have these verses laid out, dive into it. And she's like, we could do this better, And she really pushes me, like, checks and balances. She's like, okay, you're advancing your career now. Like, we can't just not think of a line and settle for this. Like, even if it takes a week to think of this line, like, we need to really sit here until we're happy with it. So
songwriting is ultra collaborative thing. If you want, especially for the music that's popular now, it's an ultra collaborative event. Mm-hmm. What's the quote? The total is greater than the sum of the parts. Like each person brings something to the table. Yeah.
And a new perspective too, you know?
Right.
They do. Yeah. And I know that's been a big problem with like egos and stuff, and like big time acts too, like Simon and Garfunkel and Oasis. And it's just like those differing personalities. But I think some of the biggest acts in music ever have been like kind of that solidified, you know, just typical 4-piece rock band where all members are contributing to the songwriting and to different parts of the song. And today, you know, there's like a fine line between having a collaboration and then you look at some sort of pop song that has 9 songwriters on it for like a 2.5 minute pop hit. And it's just like, it took 9 people to write this song.
One of them probably changed one word partway through.
Well, and that's the thing is like, I would like to one day write with like, you know, 3 or 4 people in a room, but we have a hard enough time agreeing with the 2 of us, you know? And we're funny because we're really good friends and we know each other. So we'll argue about a line, you know, for 5 minutes. And then I'll say, well, we'll let the producer pick, you know, what one he likes. Like, it's all in good fun, but you're so right. If you're writing with 9 people, you know, like who decides at the end of the day, like how the song's going to go or whatever. But
yeah, when you look at credits though, a lot of it is a little misleading because generally 2 or 3 people wrote the bulk of it. Even if you have 10 songwriters on a credit, 2 or 3 of them wrote 99% of it. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, the producer chose, no, it's this word's not working with this mic. Let's change it to the other word. And now they have their split of the song as well. So like, you know, you have to kind of take that with a grain of salt. I don't think people are really sitting in a room with 9 people.
I hope
in
not.
LA. And that'd be a little much.
No, but it's good to just, I think that writing, and I thought that it was like, you have it or you don't. And people sometimes like get intimidated of writing their own music. And it's something, and I've heard stories of this, is if you just write every day, even if it's crap and you throw it away a lot of days, you will get better. Like you think of different rhymes and patterns. And over the years, like I've noticed that our songs have gotten, you know, lyrically, I think progressive and they're not just like simple rhymes, you know, they use different things in a different way to tell a story. So I encourage people to just start practicing because there's not a good time to wait to start doing it, you know?
Right.
How has your band evolved over time? And what's been the process of getting, you know, musicians that back you and for different shows, needing different lineups? And
well, that's a great question, and it's kind of a tricky answer. But I would say I booked my first band show probably like 16, and I'd never played with a band. So I called like some friends of mine that were older that I knew, gave me a couple lessons, and basically we got in a room and the band was like, he doesn't know how to keep time or play with anybody. It was a train wreck. So we got through the first show, and the guitar player at the time, Dennis, he stuck with me. I was like 70. And so pretty soon, the next couple of years, I started growing, and we were playing like, I just saw him and we were telling the story. I'd play like an Italian restaurant in Gardnerville, upstairs at the bar, like 11 to 1 a.m. And me and him would do a duo, but we'd just crank up, and it was a full dance floor like all night. And we would just start doing that. And then my dad's cousin started drumming with us, and I built like a local band, and that was great. And we played for probably 4 years. And what was really hard this year was, okay, now you want to start going out of town and do these big shows. And like Dennis now is like 74 or something. And he's like, well, I can't be leaving this much, you know? And the professionalism too, like you need players now at this level, if you do big shows, that are just really good and tight, and they know how to use the click track and all of that. And so that was a kind of decision I had to make, was like, I love playing with the local guys, and that's great, and I've been doing it for years, but the guys in Nashville are like, to get to this level, you have to be with young guys that are ready to play. Mm-hmm. So I met a guy, Brian Johnson, who is in Reno, and he's a guitar player. And so he started playing. I think our first gig was at the Cypress. And then he said, hey, I got like these 4 guys that really want to play with you. It's kind of like a decision we got to make sooner than later. And so I ended up making the call to play with the young guys, and we've been going on the road for a couple months now. And I, although it was a hard decision, I'm glad about it. And I'm just trying to build it like family. Like, you go out of town and you spend a lot of time together. So they work really hard. And a lot of times people don't know what goes into a show. Like, you go play for 90 minutes, but you got a day of traveling to get there, rehearsals. And, I can't appreciate the band enough because they put in a lot of hours that people don't see. So,
yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. The show that I saw at the Lodge was you on acoustic, 2 guys on electric.
Yeah.
One of them switched to bass partway through. And it sounded amazing. Like, I think you can accomplish a lot when you have good musicians.
Yeah.
A little goes a long way.
Yeah, you can really make something sound big with not too much.
I agree. And they're diverse. Like, I would say the drummer's like one of the best in the band at just playing, but he plays bass, secretly plays piano. I haven't got him to do that at a show yet, but he's just really talented. And so you're right. The good musicians can wear different hats, and they have unique skills that really shine during your show for sure.
Yeah. So where do you think you are in your career right now? Is this a really pivotal moment? We were talking about the big shows that you've done, Reno Rodeo, Kickoff Concert, Night in the Country, Drifters. We talked about that even if there's 3 people at the airport walking by, you still give it your all. But, and you were talking about you're not a huge social media guy, but I feel like you're killing it on there right now. Where do you kind of see, especially from like the last 3 years, like where you are in your music career right now? And like, is this a really big kind of monumental, pivotal moment for you?
Well, that's a great question. So I think that a couple of years ago, like I don't know anything about the music business, or at least 2 years ago, this was all new territory. So like you're a local band, and you start playing like local band big shows, and you record, especially recording music. You think you're going to like put music out and people are going to just start listening to it, And so I thought we were like climbing at the top of this mountain, and then we got to the top and we were like in the parking lot, I say, and there was like Mount Everest, and we're at the bottom right now, even though it seems like we're doing great. But what I realize is like, you climb your way up as a local artist and you get like regionally known, great in your state or whatever. But now to get here and go to other states and just to really jump to the next level is much harder, what I've found. And so, but again, if you quit now, like, you can never get anywhere without putting the work in. And so you're right, it takes time. And I think that I want to say it's a pivotal moment, but I think that every year. But I do, stepping back and looking at the big picture, I see clear growth that I've made.
Oh, yeah.
And even on like Spotify, just trying to release music, and that's hard to stay consistent on that. But having 2,000 monthly listeners was a huge deal for me. I was like, hey, 2,000 isn't a lot, but that's people listening to my stuff. And that, to me, that got me excited. And then we released Uncut Diamond and had 10,000. And now I couldn't believe that. And then off this new record, I don't check all the numbers every day, but the band kept calling me one morning. I'm like, what the heck is going on? And they're like, you have like 320,000 monthly listeners. I was like, what the heck? So stuff like that came out of nowhere, and our listens keep going up somehow. I don't know if it got on a TikTok video or what, but you just got to stay excited, and little things like that fuel your fire to want to keep going.
Yeah. Hey, 2,000's 2,000 more than if you release zero music. So.
Exactly. You got to look at it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That seems like it's growing from a local to a national audience, because 2,000 is a big number for Reno. That's a fantastic number. Jumping to 300,000 plus now everyone in either everyone in Reno or a lot of people around the country are listening to your music. Yeah, that's like a big pivot, I feel like.
Yeah. And And what we're finding is the hardest thing is in today's world, like people ask me, oh, are you going to move to Nashville? And the question is no, because nowadays, like in the old days, I guess to get noticed, you had to kind of live down there and be playing at the bars. But now with social media, you can do one video and it can see 100 times more people than would see at that bar in Nashville. But the hard thing is getting out of town. These venues go through booking agents, and I think that's kind of a struggle is like, okay, how do you book a tour when no one knows you in these spots? You know, that's obviously what a booking agent's for. So that's kind of where we're at right now is trying to get a good agent to get us on the road more. But also, they don't want to pick you up unless you have credibility and a following already established.
Right.
So it's kind of a double-edged sword, but that's kind of what we're working through.
Yeah, the bigger music market, the harder it is to break into for that reason. Yeah. We just had some of the band members of local rock band Charity Kiss in last night. And they were saying the same thing about like trying to go play a show in the Bay, for example. Like you got to send 40 emails to get one response. And then they're asking you like, what's your ticket history?
Yeah.
Where that is a bit of a advantage that Reno has, I believe, because there is a lot of opportunity to go and play without needing a huge track record.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were just talking about you can be like a big fish in a small pond in Reno, and that is what kind of works towards our favor. And one of the more inspiring things doing these podcast interviews is the amount of people who actually want to either move here or stay here specifically for music.
Yeah.
And that's just really, really awesome to hear. Excuse me. Like with TikTok, yeah, you can get your voice out and your music out from the biggest little city in the world now. And that comes with its own challenges too, but it is something, it's a good tool to use if that's what, you don't have to move to Nashville now to make it in country. You can stay right here in Reno.
And that's what previous generations didn't have the luxury of.
Right. Right.
Or at least it was
there was like a actual blueprint of like how to make it back then more so. And now it's with the internet and TikTok and Spotify, it's just like you make your own rules.
That was something I wanted to ask you too, leading off of that. There isn't a lot of measuring sticks to measure against in Reno about an artist that is local that is then broken out nationally. So what have you either who have you kind of looked up to follow? And then aside from that, like what's been your path that you've taken? What are some of the things that you would that have helped you or that have hindered you that you've learned on this path towards gaining a larger, wider audience?
I think especially growing up, like getting up with bands, especially when I was a kid, they'd let me sit in. And then once I had my own band opening for people, like I know Jake Jacobson had us on a show when I was pretty young, and that inspired me. Huckleberry Road, I watched their podcast. That was awesome. And they brought us out. And guys like that, like there's not a book of all the rules and stuff. And so I had a lot of questions, like getting the new band put together and buying new gear. Like I'll text Huckleberry Road and say, hey, what are you guys doing for this? And they're the nicest guys and they really try to help you out. And I try to do that for people asking me questions, but I think having support like that around here is really nice, that you can reach out if you need, and just watching other people's shows and seeing how they're doing it, or, you're your own person, so you can take certain things you like from bands that you think is doing well, but also you can do your own, things that try to make you grow. So
that's like one of the biggest things I took away from our interview with Huckleberry Road was like I don't know, I think it was Dylan who was saying like, you got to make it an event, you got to collaborate with other musicians. You got to like bring the best thing forward. And that's just been like the coolest thing doing this is just like how integrated the local music scene in Reno really is that you don't see unless you're actively like participating in it or like talking to people. Like you don't see that on the surface level, but it's there.
And it also has a lot of room for growth, I think. What's been your experience with either interacting with other musical acts in town, or collaborating with local bands and musicians, has it been a pretty solid collaborative experience, or do you think there's a lot of room for improvement there?
I think there's always room to grow for sure, and I always feel bad, like, summer hits and we get busy doing shows, and then it's like I don't get to collaborate as much. But you also kind of just have that respect that everyone's out hustling, and they're busy. But when you can all meet up together, or I like doing shows where, other bands are a part of. And that's kind of what Night in the Country's been more involved in, is bringing out like kind of the bigger local acts. And that's super fun for me. Like, we get to play, but also get to go watch Huckleberry Road and all the guys playing. I think that's great. But yeah, I think that, and I know they're helping other artists like kind of get developed, and they're really, I would say, taking the lead on that around here, kind of collaborating, and I think that's awesome, and I think it'll just keep growing from here for sure.
Yeah. What would be a big help to a smaller local artist trying to get their music out, whether it's just in Reno or beyond, but what are some either tools that are lacking in Reno or some things that could really help them along that way?
I would say playing shows and just getting to know people. And I always struggle with this, but telling people like, hey, I have this song out, or finding your niche audience too. Like, I wouldn't necessarily go to more of a pop venue and be trying to sell my songs. You find people that love your style of music and have them listen to it, because I feel like this is going to sound funny with social media, but I still think word of mouth is almost the strongest tool.
Absolutely.
And so if 10 people tell 10 people who tell their friends about your music, now you have a lot of people listening. And I think that's something that I even struggle with, like going out, I'll say, hey, have you heard my new EP, Sin and Salvation? And a lot of people that even come to my shows are like, I had no idea. So it's still like even a struggle for me to get your music out there. I think is hard, but I think just hitting every avenue you can is important. Don't just do one thing, like social media, try to boost it on Spotify or whatever you can do. Just try to get it out there and tell people.
Yeah, I think word of mouth, especially in like a city like Reno, given its like kind of unique size, it's the biggest little city in the world,
Mm-hmm.
And for 2 years, Joel and I were really just kind of like the guys behind the keyboard, posting every day with like faceless posts of just like all the music in town and to get people to go. And then we rebranded, revamped. We started to go out. We actually were at the Drifters Festival the day after.
Yeah.
Hauser, Randy Hauser was the one that, the headliner that night. We didn't have like press passes or passes to go in, but we just kind of stood outside and we were just talking to people and kind of letting them know and just talking to them face to face. And people are like, oh, this is really cool. And I feel like that's what Reno is really good at, is that word of mouth. You tell one friend, they'll tell 5 friends, each tell 5 friends. And that's just how like the word really kind of,
and then it has a lasting impression too. When someone says something to your face versus seeing something as you're scrolling on Instagram, it really has an impact. But speaking of the Drifters Festival, we were talking earlier about like different kinds of shows, and you mentioned playing in the Reno airport and all these things. So can you talk a little bit about your mindset of going to or playing different shows of different sizes and different locations, from airport lobby and people just kind of not paying attention walking by, and then being able to come out on stage at a big festival with a full band and a large audience? What's some of the mental processes that you go through?
Well, it's definitely a struggle, but I think at the end of the day, you have to just realize that no artist is going to snap their finger and only do big shows, And so I say doing small shows, it kind of leads to big shows too. You got to think of it like that. A lot of times you meet people who know somebody and you kind of get that. But at the same time, like, even if 4 people that day hear your music and are fans and you get to connect with them, like, in my book, that's a positive thing, So you got to look at each day as a small success, and the big things put fuel in your tank to want to keep doing and playing, But I think that every year you hope to book more big shows, and you got to just look at the growth and say, hey, 2 years ago we got one, and this year we did 6 really big ones. And you got to know that it's continuous improvement. But like you said, even if there's 2 people out there, don't just sit there and play. You got to put your heart into it no matter what.
Yeah.
And play the best show you can give the handful of people there.
Right.
I like we had Michael Teggy on. We were talking about him a little bit earlier. He had like a thing called No Zero Days. And it was just like, as long as you're doing something. And he's like, even if it's just changing your guitar strings, there, you did it. That was a No Zero day. You did something, move on to the next day. And then maybe the next day you play a show for 1,000 people. Then the next day you just, maybe you just lay down some vocal tracks on that and you call it good. But you're it's the consistency that leads to success in anything, but definitely music, especially if you're trying to build a brand, and you got to think of it as like a business.
Mm-hmm.
You do. And at the end of the day, like, this even sounds silly to say, but just being a good person, like doing what you love and being an honest guy and just showing up for not just work, but for the people, like, I think that goes a long way. You're almost selling yourself and your personality as much as like the band playing or whatever. And I think people get lost in the career and all this stuff, and they just need to kind of find why they're doing this in the first place. You know?
Yeah.
It's for the people, so you might as well show up no matter what, and be a good person and have fun with them and play your heart out.
Be genuine.
Yeah. That's huge.
That's what people that's the lasting impression. Mm-hmm. That's what people remember. People can tell even on social media who's phony and what's
humans have a good BS detector innately.
Yeah, they do.
Well, my dad will call me and like I'll meet people singing and they'll say, hey, like somehow on social media we touch base or get contact, and they'll be like, having a barbecue, you want to come by for a whiskey? And I'll just show up with my guitar and play some songs, and you can't get in the mindset ever that like, oh, you're too big for certain things. Like, I'll go meet a stranger and just play at their barbecue,
Mm-hmm.
and you meet people that way. And that's, to me, what's really fun.
So, one of my guys at work, shout out Jaden. We got him. We got Jakota. He grew up in Gardnerville. His family, the Fosters.
Mm-hmm.
Teddy Foster, he used to be your football coach, right? But you were telling me a really good story earlier.
Well, that's kind of the community. And like I was saying, I'm like, we're supposed to talk about music so I can tie it in, but even like you get a lot of support in a small town, even like your football coach. And so I was telling this funny story about Teddy is we were doing a relay race, like for practice. It was a fun day and the moms came in and raced the kids. Well, I was by far the slowest kid on the team and I was pretty embarrassed about it, And so I ran by my mom and she like jumped out of line and held my jersey down, trying to make me like slowed up. And I was already slow, so I was pissed. I'm like, are you kidding me? She added 10 seconds on my time. And so I had my pads on, and given I was not in high school, I was probably second grade, 6 years old. So I was a little kid, but she came around the corner and I was just fuming, that I was so embarrassed. And so I'm like, I'm going to slow her down when she comes around the corner. And next thing you know, I just full on tackled her and laid her out in front of all the parents. And I look over and Teddy has a big camera and he's like, that was the best tackle you ever made. And she had like a black eye, and it sounds terrible, but I love my mom and I never tackled her besides then. But it's so funny. He started coming to shows and I said, you have that tape somewhere? Like, that would be just the funniest tape ever. He got it right on film and he lost it, but he's like, I'm finding it in all the camera stuff. So that is the one we always laugh about at the holidays.
You got to put that in a music video someday if you find that footage.
We should.
Oh, that would be amazing.
I'd give anything for that video. I think it would be so funny because, you grow up telling this story and then it's like, oh, wait, we have that on camera. So,
yeah.
But no, the Fosters are awesome and they come to shows, and just a lot of people like that in town. You realize over the years you have more friends than you think, and it's pretty cool.
How's growing up in a small town like Gardnerville, that tight-knit community, how's that been a factor for your music?
I think it's been huge, and I think that you gotta give back as much as you can in different ways. And just, I feel like when you start playing, you know, you're like your parents' friends come watch you, and you gotta. And I remember I would do shows and I would go through my contact list and personally call people and say, hey, playing tonight at this bar, would you be able to come? And I might get 50 people there, and I called like 200 of my parents' friends, inviting them to come watch. And I think what I like to see is just the community come out and watch your show, and they're kind of involved, I feel like, in my journey because they've been there, a lot of people, since day one in my first show. So it's cool to me to see them there now, and I try to like go out and talk to them and, you know, get a picture with them and say, thank you so much. Like, I know I've seen you for 4 years coming, and that makes me want to keep playing, you know, seeing these people come. And a lot of times, like, even Carly at the lodge is like, oh, you know, you're doing bigger shows. I understand if you can't come back and do the lodge. And to some degree, that's true. You can't do small shows all the time if you're trying to get big ones. But for venues that have booked me for years, like, I'm like, I know you probably can't pay as much as like a big show, but I'm going to come back. I'm going to do the show for you. I'm going to do it for the people that have always came. Mm-hmm. And that's a small way to me that I think you can give back, and it's really cool.
Just showing loyalty to the people who showed you loyalty
exactly.
when you were up and coming.
You have to do that.
Yeah, that's something that's not as present in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that loyalty factor for sure. You mentioned you dropped a little bit of an announcement earlier about going back to Blackbird Studios in later this year. But what does the future look like on a broader scale? What does the future look like for Jakota?
That's a good question, and I laugh and say every day I have no idea what that looks like. Well, and I was telling you guys, I went to UNR, and at first I was like interested in doing something with music, but I really was interested in finance. So I did summer school, and I got out of there in 3 years. I got a finance degree, and then I graduated, and I was like, I always wanted to do something with like stocks, and I was like, it's always going to be there, but I want to pursue music for sure. And that's what I did. And so I've been doing that, but it's hard because this is the biggest struggle, I think, for musicians is you don't know in 3 years, like if you busted your tail at a job, you probably get promoted and you get more pay and bigger, but you could do the same thing as a musician and never get that lucky break. It's very uncertain. So I like to think that, you know, hopefully in a few years, you know, my career is a lot bigger than it is now, but at the same time, there's no guarantee. So just keep working, recording, and incorporating new ideas. Like when we're going to the Blackbird Studio, this is something new. We're trying to like have certain fans get to come to Nashville and go into the studio, and they kind of help sponsor the album or get their name on it. And so we have a lot of people actually flying to Nashville, coming to the studio this year, and I've never done that before. So that's going to be really cool.
That's
just
rad.
To watch how that works. But I saw a quote on TikTok the other day, and I'll wrap this up with this, is success is slower than you think, but faster than you're ready for. Like you work for years trying to something to happen, and then all of a sudden, you know, like it seems like this last month, a lot of things have been happening with the new band. You're like, wow, you know, you got to take a step back that you work for years and then things go quick.
Yeah.
That's so true. You also have to remain ready for that opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't know when it's going to come.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it could be any day. You never know.
Yeah. You have to be ready all times.
Yep. As someone who has not been ready on multiple occasions, yes.
Well, I like to fly by the seat of my pants too. The band, this probably frustrates them, but like growing up, I would do covers before I wrote a lot of my stuff. So I think we do over 300 cover songs. Now I try to do my originals at shows, and that's been a struggle because some people don't know your originals yet. So like, sure, if you play a cover song, everyone knows the crowd's going to be more interactive with it, but you'll never get your own music out. So that's why at the Reno Rodeo, we did one cover song in our whole set. But it meant so much to me at that show. Tons of people were singing along to all the songs. So that was super cool. But we did a show a few days ago, and our bass player was out that night, kind of in between bass players. And I go to Guitar Center to buy a guitar, and I look over, and there's this person slaying the bass. I said, you want to come play a show in an hour? And so they didn't even play country music at all. and came to the show and played with the band. And I just like do crazy stuff like that. You know, every day is different. So you got to just kind of live in the moment. And, you know, you meet a good musician, just say, come on, you know, let's play. Doesn't matter if it's, people fixate on stuff being perfect. But at the same time, like if you guys are having fun and the crowd feeds off of that more than anything.
Right. What's one song, album, EP, show, whatever, that you've put out that you're most proud of? Like just your most proudest work up to date?
That's a good question. I think it changes every time I release something because I try to like quote unquote beat the last project. You know, you want to write better songs and have better composition. And so like my first album, Battleborn, like you can tell I was a young kid on it. I wasn't a great singer. My voice hadn't changed. The songs were pretty like low level writing, but knowing that I did that at 16 was really cool. And there's a couple of ones I love on there, especially Battleborn. And then doing that next, my self-titled EP, I was really proud about that because it sounded a lot more professional. And then Sin and Salvation, we did all together at Blackbird. So I think every record, you know, you kind of top, and that's why I'm so excited for October. Doing a full album down there will be cool. But certain songs, I feel like every song is different. And what you hit on, and I think this is so true, is I've never recorded a song and had it been just like how I was envisioning it before, especially with the full band playing on it. Mm-hmm. Every time you leave and go, wow, that's way different than I was expecting that.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a beauty of it. Sometimes, like on Sin and Salvation, you know, Time Machine was my favorite song going into it. And not my least favorite, but it wasn't my favorite coming out. But then you have a song like Time Loving You. We were debating whether even to put on it. And it's my favorite song when it was recorded, and it almost has 500,000 streams on it. So you just never know. It changes.
Yeah. I could tell from the self-titled EP to Sin and Salvation, just the maturity and the growth in there. Like nothing wrong with the other one, but you could just tell. Was it Lead and the Devils, the opener? And you kind of get that like twangy sound in there. And I was just, Jakota means business on this one. Like you could just instantly from the first 10 seconds be like, okay, this is different and in a good way. Yeah. Yeah.
And I truly think the collaboration with the people being in the studios, it sounded better.
Sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It always is a little bit of a roll of the dice though. Like I remember hearing, I don't remember exactly which song it was. Rascal Flatts. It was either like Stand or What Hurts the Most. I think it was What Hurts the Most. Yep. It was a day of edition. Like the song itself got presented to them day of when they recorded it. Wow. Ended up being like the biggest single on that album, you know? And sometimes you just never know. It's a little bit of catching lightning in a bottle, I think. But you might have a vision going into it. This is going to be what it is. And now then the art takes over. And resonates with people, and you didn't expect it.
That's the thing, is like art is always just like, it's like the first draft you put out. Like the thing in your head is always the first draft, and then you just keep adding on to it and editing it. It's just like writing, you know, and painting. You just like you're supposed to make mistakes on it, and you'll catch those once you actually start putting it outside your head, and then you're like, oh, actually, I really like this better. Yeah. But you only saw it one way for the longest time until you actually started like putting it out on paper.
How do you determine when a song is finished, either writing or recording?
Well, I think that it's good to have people around you that are super honest with you too. Cause I know I could write a song and, well, saying my dad's not a good example because he's brutally honest sometimes, but you know, you send it to your sister, let's say, and she's obviously biased. Oh, that's great, you know.
Unless your sister hates you.
Yeah, no, then don't do that, you know. But what I love working with Adam, the producer on all these songs, is he's like, he means business, and he's not just gonna tell me something's good because he wants my business, you know. Like if you're hiring a guy, they don't want to get fired, right? So they're going to tell you good things. But he's multiple times I've sent him a song and he's like, hey, I like these 3 lines. The rest of the song I don't love. Now, of course, that's his opinion. but he's been really experienced in that. And it pushes me to say, honestly, like I knew that in the back of my head. I really need to work harder at finishing this song up. And so that's pretty cool. And me and him sit down, like my goal, if this album's 10 songs, to write 15 to 20 songs by October. And it's hard. We sit down and we're like, okay, we can only pick half of these to record. What are we picking? Mm-hmm. And there's a song that I'm giving him crap about because I really want to put this song I wrote about my grandma on the record. He's like, we think we can this year because 10 songs, you can put little sentimental Easter eggs in there. You know, when it's an EP, you want more like radio songs on there. So, but yeah, I'm excited this year to pick the songs with him because obviously I'm attached to all of them. So it's good to get a person that's out of your head that can say, I think these go well together, you know. But yeah, it's a hard decision. And sometimes you could never finish a song, you know.
Yeah.
You could just keep going back on it, and especially mixing it, you know, I don't do that. But the guy doing it, like I could send tweaks for days, but you need to say, okay, it's time to be done with it.
Constructive criticism, especially from someone who is in your corner, is probably the most valuable thing that anyone could have. I
agree.
Yeah.
How would you like people to find you and your music? What's your preferred way?
I feel like Instagram is the platform I try to hit most on. And on the link in the bio, you can get all the music there and kind of behind the scenes, like seeing the cows, you know, in the morning and seeing the big shows at nighttime.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also, like, I am trying to grow my TikTok. That's been a work in progress. It's a little slacking, but if they have TikTok, I'm really trying to start getting out on there a little bit. Obviously, all streaming platforms. Yeah, and that means a lot when people get on there, especially local people in Reno, you know, trying to build that.
Yeah.
Still always growing that local fan base is huge.
That's kind of the thing. Everyone just kind of sits on wait and is just like and comparing all the numbers and like this one. And then you feel really, really good about a certain product that doesn't hit the numbers that you think. And then you put out something that you're like not necessarily not proud of, but you're like how did that one, you're like, that one blew up. But I'm not even like super proud of that one too. And it's kind of like, it messes with your
I think you have to detach from that because absolutely. I agree. You get trapped into that. And my girlfriend posted a TikTok and it got like 2 million likes. And I'm like, I'm slaving away here trying to get 1,000 likes, you know, and it was just a funny video. So
I know,
but that's what you got to do. You just got to stay consistent, I think. And that's something I don't do on TikTok. Like I'll post for a week and then I kind of fall off the wagon. So
I think that's the key thing to take away is like, we were talking about consistency and you might not ever make it. So like you put so many hours into your job and in a business and in an office and the next step is promotion. That may not happen. I think as long as you stay consistent, you put in the hard work, it will always pay off. Maybe not in the way that you think it is. And you might not get to the level status that you always envisioned, but I think it will still always pay off as long as you are putting in the hours and the consistency. You will always get something in return. Yeah.
And even like, you got to think of like, I encourage all musicians to think this is, why are you really doing this at the end of the day? Like, are you trying to be a big star? What are you doing it for? And like, I think that people like, this has always been my answers because I love what I do. Like even just singing at the lodge, like I go and I'm like, I try not to take breaks. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be a 3-hour straight show. And then I get done and I'm like, wow, that flew by. Like that was really fun.
Yeah.
And you're like, that's why I do this, is for that, not anything else. And everything that happens besides that is just added, you know.
Right.
Do you have any shows coming up that you want people to know about that are local or otherwise?
I do. So we're playing, I'm not sure when this will be released, but 4th of July, I'm playing up in Tahoe. At the Golden Nugget, they're doing a rooftop party with the fireworks, so that'll be fun. So a full band one. And then we're kind of touring in California a little bit. We're going to go to Modesto July 11th, and then Folsom is not too far from Reno, July 12th, and that's really cool at the Folsom Hotel Saloon.
Nice.
So trying to get out there, and then we'll be at night in the country. And so that'll be good to see some local people there that like to get rowdy, so...
I'm slowly getting into the country life here. I just went to the rodeo this week for the first time since, I'm spitballing, but I'm probably not too far off. Probably since like 2003. I had no idea what I was missing. That was a good time. Yeah.
I don't go as much. Like, sadly this year I didn't go watch the rodeo, and I always do like to do that. But you see all these people there, and I love watching it, you know.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I do think country's coming back because, you know, you'll go to high school with these girls and they love rap and they hate country, and then you see them now and they have a cowboy hat on, and you're like, I thought you hated country music.
You run into them at the Reno rodeo and like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
All right.
So
I have a fun question for you.
Yeah.
I always mean to ask this question in these, and I've always forgotten until now. So I'm going to give us a little context. I think we can all agree that like playing an instrument makes you instantly a little more attractive.
Oh, I know.
Right?
I know you're going with this.
Yeah. And my wife and I were talking about this, and we're specifically talking about guitar. And I want to ask you, why do you think, specifically for a male and playing guitar, why do you think that makes a guy more attractive?
that's a good question. I want to get your guys' response to this after.
Okay.
I think I'm just kind of coming up with this on the spot, but I feel like girls like confidence, and guys that play music have to be somewhat confident if they're putting themselves on the line playing something. And it's also something that not everyone does, maybe. So that's just an idea off the top of my head.
No,
but
that makes sense.
That's a really good answer. Joel's answer is now and what Joel's about to say is going to be like,
so
a
here's
disappointing.
here's my answer. And I think yours is spot on.
It's spot on.
My first thought was like, playing music is a pretty vulnerable thing.
Mhm.
And that tails off of confidence too. You have to be confident enough to be able to put yourself out there.
Exactly.
But like, you know, because that's something that a lot of guys, we have trouble opening up about, more being vulnerable. Where like playing music, you're putting yourself on the spot.
You
and
are.
Yeah.
It's an artistic thing. It's an emotional thing. And so that was my thought.
When Joel asked me, I just said it's like, you're working with your hands, and it's like kind of an attractive thing for like a man to be like the tool of the trade, working with your hands.
Yeah. So my wife is from Ukraine.
Okay.
I don't know if this has anything to do with it or not, but just for more context. And she was like, I always thought that it was because a guitar looks like a woman.
Really?
And it's like when a guy's playing guitar, he's
Like
like
holding a
playing
woman?
a woman.
I've never heard that one, but
It blew my mind.
I didn't think
it
that
makes
either.
sense though. You know what?
And you know, I haven't talked to any other women about this. I don't think that's ever come up with the topic of conversation. So like, I'm really curious to like actually get people's input on this. 'Cause that blew my mind.
I think it's a combination of like the physical aspect, working with your hands, and then like it's an emotional thing. Like you're pouring out your soul when you're playing music. It's
You could probably offend a woman if you have a big old bottom guitar set, you know.
a big old dreadnought.
Yeah, you want a skinny guitar if you're comparing them to. But no, that's true. I think that, you know, playing and you meet a lot of people and a lot of people like that. And that's where I'm lucky when I met my girlfriend at a show. Like, it was before, she didn't know I played at all. I had no clue. And, you know, that's something special to me that, you know, because even friends, like you meet a guy at your show and you're like, I want to be friends with anyone, but, you know, is he really friends because we were just playing? And,
Sure.
you know, there's an aspect of that. But at the end of the day, you don't know, and you got to just be friends with everyone, especially if they're genuine people.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. That one still blew my mind.
I know. I can't get over that.
Yeah.
It took me so by surprise. Like, I mean, you're not wrong. That's wild.
Maybe subconsciously.
I'm going to start naming my guitar like girls' names, you know? Like I'm playing Brittany tonight or Sabrina.
Yeah. Thank you again
Yeah.
for doing this.
Thank
we
you,
appreciate you coming
Jakota.
by.
This has been
Thank
a
you guys.
pleasure.
You guys have been just really giving spotlights to musicians around here, and I haven't seen a lot of that in Reno. So you guys are kind of taking it by the head and making a path. So you guys are the best. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Much appreciated. Yeah, we're doing our best to be whatever kind of glue we can be to the scene here.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we appreciate that.
And you ask great questions, and you know a bit about the industry. So I like your questions have some depth to them.
We
Appreciate
want
that.
it to be a conversation, really,
Yeah.
you know, and get to know it's been fantastic.
We want to bring
getting to
out
know-
real topics and real discussion,
Yeah.
but we also want it to be kind of like just relaxed and like fun too, and
Yeah.
just a little bit of best of both worlds.
Yeah. So tell your friends.
Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? When you crack the whiskey, it's definitely fun.
Yeah. I don't know, Brian, you're done.
I already
I'm-
finished. I
I'm
can't
slacking
cheers.
here.
That's
We're gonna
Wait, hold on,
finish
hold
that
on.
bottle after
Hold
this
on,
and
let me- at least just a cheers, you guys.
get a little crazy.
Just at
That's
least.
a really cool bottle, I
Yeah.
gotta say.
This. You'll have it just like. Actually, that one's a little bit lighter than the original one, but
Sweet.
there's a few that are
Yeah.
like. I mean,
Substantial.
yeah.
Hey, Wolfpack bottle. That's can't get better than that.
Let's get that out.
Yeah.
So it can
Go pack.
go pack.
Nice.
Cheers, guys. Thank you
Cheers,
for
guys.
having me out.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for watching to the end. Thank you to Jakota for coming in and chatting with us. Find his music anywhere you listen. His latest release, Sin and Salvation EP, is out. Definitely give it a listen. Some amazing tracks on there. And check out his Instagram, where he posts regularly, as well as his website, jakotawass.com, for information about tour dates or show dates in July. Thank you again for listening. Until next time, rock on Reno.